So I was looking at a chart this morning.
Okay.
It was one of those exponential curves that tech Twitter just loves to obsess over.
Oh, right. The up and to the right ones.
Exactly. And it was tracking the capabilities of large language models against, standard white-collar job descriptions. And honestly,
Terrifying.
yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, you see these models passing the bar exam, diagnosing these really rare diseases, writing completely functional code in seconds.
It really is the anxiety of the decade right now.
Right. It's
Yeah.
hard not to look at that and think, okay, is the clock just ticking on literally everyone?
We are definitely moving from this idea of, automation is for factories to automation is for thinking, and that just shifts the ground under everyone's feet.
It really does. But before we go build a bunker and completely unplug the Wi-Fi, we actually have a really different perspective to parse today for you.
We do.
We're doing a deep dive into a guide, and it's called The Human Advantage, 50 Careers Robots Can't Replace.
By StoryBuddiesPlay.
Right, by StoryBuddiesPlay. And I have to say, my initial reaction to that title was total skepticism.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, is this just another learn to code pamphlet in disguise? But digging into the source material, it's actually making a much more nuanced argument.
It is. The source isn't just a list of jobs you should apply for. It's really a philosophical argument about what work actually is.
Right.
It treats, right now, the year 2024 as this divergence point. So instead of just focusing on what AI can do, which, let's be honest, is what we usually obsess over, it meticulously maps out the boundaries where automation just hits a wall.
So it's essentially a future-proof map.
Ideally, yeah. And the mission for this deep dive is to basically test that map.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the source's core thesis, that the human touch, and they specifically mean emotion, complex judgment, and physical adaptability, is becoming the premium asset in the new economy.
You need to figure out if these 50 careers are actually safe or if this is all just, wishful thinking. So let's just dive right in. Let's start with the first pillar the guide establishes, which is the evolution of labor.
Right.
It makes this claim that despite the Industrial Revolution, despite the internet, human roles haven't actually disappeared. They've just migrated.
But people always ask, isn't this time different?
Because intelligence itself is being commoditized.
That is the valid fear. But the source argues we need to look at what they call the empathy factor, and they look particularly at healthcare for this.
Okay.
Now, I know what you're thinking. AI diagnostics are already outperforming humans in some really specific radiology tasks.
I was actually going to say, if I have a weird rash, I might honestly trust a database with a billion images more than, like, a tired GP who hasn't had his morning coffee yet.
And for the raw identification of that rash, you might be totally right.
Right.
But the source distinguishes between diagnosis and care. This is the human-centric label they apply to the whole sector.
Because healthcare isn't just data processing.
Exactly. It's the application of that data to a frightened human being.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
The guide argues that compliance, meaning, getting a patient to actually take their meds or change their lifestyle or endure a really painful treatment, that relies entirely on trust.
So it's about the delivery system.
Yeah.
Like the bedside manner.
It's more functional than just a manner, though. It's about reading the subtext.
How do you mean?
Well, think about when a patient says, I'm fine, and AI logs that as patient reports status, fine.
Right. It takes it literally.
But a human nurse hears the tremor in their voice. They notice the lack of eye contact, and the nurse understands, oh, this person is terrified and they're hiding their symptoms.
Wow. Yeah.
That specific type of emotional data gathering is incredibly difficult to digitize because it requires a shared biological reality.
A shared biological reality.
Yeah.
I like that. That actually connects perfectly to Chapter 9 in the source, which is about the social fabric.
Yes.
They broaden this whole concept out to social workers, community organizers, things like that.
Yeah.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
A lot of social work is basically resource allocation, right?
Yeah.
Connecting people to benefits, finding them housing, getting them legal aid.
True.
Isn't that essentially just a giant routing problem? Why can't an algorithm handle that efficiency better than a person with a clipboard?
If humans were purely rational actors, it would absolutely be a routing problem.
But we're not.
Not even close. The source really emphasizes the messiness of the human condition.
Right.
A social worker walking into a domestic crisis isn't just optimizing resources, they are actively de-escalating a volatile situation. They're assessing safety risks that aren't logged in any database anywhere.
building immediate rapport with people who might be actively hostile to the system.
Exactly.
You just can't automate the de-escalation of a shouting match.
You really can't. The source describes this as maintaining the social fabric. Trust is the glue here.
Yeah.
If you replace that human with a kiosk or a chatbot, sure, you might get the intake paperwork done faster, but you lose the engagement that actually changes the outcome.
The argument is basically that as long as human lives are chaotic and emotional, we need emotional agents to navigate them.
Precisely.
Okay, so the messiness protects the social sector. Let's pivot over to the intellectual side. Education.
This is a big one.
It is, because the source talks about the mentorship model. And I feel like this is one of the most threatened areas out there.
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, I have Khan Academy on my phone. I have GPT-4 acting as a personal tutor. I could literally sit in my living room and learn quantum physics at 3 a.m. if I want to.
Right.
So why does the source think teachers are still indispensable?
Because you have access to information, which is not the same thing as education.
Ah, okay.
The source makes a really hard distinction here between information transfer and teaching and guidance. AI has absolutely driven the cost of information transfer to zero.
It's basically free now.
But the bottleneck in education has never really been a lack of textbooks.
It's the motivation. It's getting the kid to actually sit down and open the book.
Bingo. The mentorship model described in the guide is all about metacognition. It's about emotional regulation.
Okay, break that down for me.
A teacher's job in the AI age isn't to be a walking encyclopedia anymore. It's to look a student in the eye and figure out exactly why they are struggling.
Like, is it a cognitive gap?
Or is it a confidence issue? Is it something happening at home that's distracting them?
That's a really good point. An AI tutor can explain the quadratic equation to me 1,000 different ways, but it fundamentally doesn't care if I actually learn it.
And you know it doesn't care. That is the key.
Right.
We are social learners. We evolved to learn from other humans. The source suggests that mentorship is uniquely human because it involves role modeling.
A machine can simulate encouragement? Sure, great job. With a little confetti animation.
But a student knows it's just a simulation. The validation you get from a human mentor carries a totally different weight. A push notification from an app just doesn't compare.
So the value proposition for teachers completely shifts. It goes from, I know all the facts, to, I can help you navigate the actual challenge of learning.
Correct. You become a curator of potential, not just a content delivery
I
system.
love that. Curator of potential.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's move to a sector that usually prides itself on being very cold and very logical.
Oh.
Law and justice.
Yes.
The guide lists this under ethical intelligence. Now, to me, the legal system seems like a prime candidate for automation.
It looks like it on paper.
Right. It's just rules, precedents, logic, gates. If X, then Y. Why shouldn't we want a robo-judge that is perfectly consistent and never gets tired before lunch?
It is a really seductive idea, perfect consistency. But the source argues that justice isn't about binary logic, it's about moral decision-making.
The legal system is designed to handle edge cases.
Exactly. The edge cases where the rules conflict with reality.
The classic spirit of the law versus the letter of the law.
Precisely that gap. Think about criminal sentencing. A judge looks at a defendant and has to weigh their intent, their remorse, their background, the potential for rehabilitation.
All very human things.
Right. An algorithm just operates on probability and statistics. It might look at a massive data set and say, statistically, people with this profile reoffend, and just lock them up.
Which is terrifying.
It is, because a human judge can look at the actual context and say, no, this specific situation was a tragedy, not a pattern.
So we're talking about the fundamental difference between a utilitarian calculation and actual justice.
The source calls this ethical intelligence. It's the ability to understand why a rule exists in the first place and exactly when it needs to be bent.
And there's a societal aspect to this too, right?
Absolutely. We generally have this deep-seated need to be judged by our peers.
Yeah.
There is an inherent horror in the idea of being sentenced by a black box that you can't reason with.
The legitimacy of the court literally comes from the human element.
Without it, the whole system feels dystopian.
That makes a lot of sense. We want to be able to look the judge in the eye.
We need to.
Okay, let's talk about the area that I think causes the absolute most existential dread right now. The arts.
The creative frontiers. This is the battleground.
It really is. The source talks about innovation beyond algorithms, but I really have to push back on this one.
Okay, let's hear it.
We are seeing AI win photography contests. We're seeing it write poetry that actually moves people to tears. If the final output is completely indistinguishable from human work, Does the human source actually matter?
The source argues that it matters more now than ever.
How so?
The distinction they draw is between generation and creation. AI is fundamentally an engine of synthesis.
It scrapes and remixes.
Right. It scrapes the entire recorded history of human culture and remixes it. It is unbelievably good at the how to structure a perfect sonnet, how to render the exact physics of light hitting water.
But it lacks the why.
It lacks the intent. The source suggests that true creativity, the kind that actually pushes the frontier forward, comes from a desperate need to express a specific subjective experience.
Because a machine doesn't have trauma.
Exactly. It doesn't have trauma, it doesn't have joy, it doesn't have a subconscious. When a human writes a song about heartbreak, they are encoding a lived experience that resonates with another human's lived experience.
So AI is essentially just the world's greatest cover band.
That's a great analogy.
It can play all the notes perfectly, but it never actually lived the blues.
That's the argument. And in a world completely flooded with AI-generated content, which the source absolutely predicts will happen, the premium on human-made work goes way up.
Because we crave connection with the artist, not just the art itself.
We want to know that there is a consciousness behind the work. The innovation beyond algorithms is about breaking the pattern. AI is inherently designed to just follow the pattern.
That logic applies perfectly to science too, doesn't it? The source mentions the science of discovery.
Yes. Curiosity-driven research. This is point number 8 in the guide. Look, AI is an optimizer.
Okay.
If you give it a clear goal like find a molecule that binds to this exact protein, it is fantastic.
It'll do it in seconds.
But it doesn't wake up in the middle of the night wondering about the fundamental nature of dark matter.
It doesn't ask questions it wasn't prompted to ask.
Because curiosity is often incredibly inefficient. It's irrational. Humans explore complete dead ends just because we have a weird hunch.
Right.
The source posits that the science of discovery is safe from automation because discovery is about stepping into the unknown, often without any clear data trail to follow.
AI needs data to function. It hates the void.
And humans are weirdly comfortable staring into the void and just guessing.
I love that phrase, weirdly comfortable staring into the void.
It's true, though.
Let's ground this a bit, because we've been hovering at a very high philosophical level. What about the physical world?
Ah, the trades.
Yeah, the source has a whole section on tactile mastery and skilled trades.
This is chapter 6. Why skilled trades defy automation. And honestly, this is where the robots are coming for everywhere narrative falls apart the fastest.
But wait, I've seen the videos. The Boston Dynamics robots doing literal backflips. They look pretty agile to me.
Sure, but backflips are just math. The environment in those videos is perfectly controlled. The ground is flat.
Okay, here.
Now, take that exact same multi-million-dollar robot and put it in a tiny crawl space under a 1920s bungalow.
Oh boy.
The pipes are rusted together. There's a leak constantly spraying water right onto its optical sensors. The wood framing is completely non-standard. And there's an angry raccoon hissing in the corner.
Okay, I definitely see the difference now.
It's something called Moravec's paradox.
What's that?
High-level reasoning is computationally very easy for a machine, but low-level sensor motor skills like tying your shoes or grabbing a slippery pipe are incredibly hard.
So the source focuses on the unstructured environment.
Exactly. A plumber, an electrician, a carpenter, they are constantly solving these complex 3D spatial puzzles that change every few minutes.
The pure chaos of the physical world is their shield.
To automate a plumber, you would need a robot with the dexterity of a human hand, the real-time problem-solving of an engineer, and the mobility of an Olympic gymnast.
And it all has to cost less than a $100 service call.
Right. We are nowhere near that. The tactile mastery the source describes is about the seamless integration of hand, eye, and brain in a very messy reality.
It is deeply reassuring to know that the sheer messiness of reality is actual job security.
It really is.
Speaking of mess, let's move into the boardroom. Strategic leadership. Managing complex human systems.
This is basically the corporate version of the social fabric point we discussed earlier.
Right, because we often think of leadership as just making decisions based on spreadsheets.
And if that were true, every CEO could be replaced by a dashboard tomorrow.
But organizations are just giant collections of irrational, emotional, competing human beings.
Herding cats again.
Exactly.
But specifically, leadership is about alignment. A leader has to sell a vision to people who might actively not want to buy it.
They have to negotiate between, say, an ego-driven marketing VP and a super risk-averse CFO.
An AI can easily look at the quarterly numbers and say, cut costs by 20%. but it cannot navigate the political fallout of that decision.
Or motivate the remaining team to keep working hard when morale drops.
The source also connects this directly to crisis management in Chapter 10, high-stakes decision-making.
The captain on the bridge scenario.
Exactly. When a massive crisis hits, a PR scandal, a natural disaster, a sudden market crash, the data is usually incredibly scarce or totally conflicting.
The fog of war.
And we know what AI does when it runs out of data.
It hallucinates.
It creates very plausible nonsense. In a real crisis, you need human intuition, which is really just advanced pattern recognition born of actual lived experience.
Combined with moral courage.
Yes, you need someone willing to stand up and say, I don't know for sure, but we are going this way, and I take full responsibility.
That word responsibility keeps coming up. Because at the end of the day, we can't sue an algorithm.
Accountability is a purely human burden. The source stresses that in these high-stakes roles, society simply demands a throat to choke if things go wrong.
We deeply need a human to own the risk.
We do.
So we've covered a ton of ground here today. The human advantage really seems to boil down to empathy, navigating chaos, ethical judgment, and creative intent.
That's the core of it.
But the guide doesn't just say, ignore the robots and they'll go away. It talks about the new economy.
Right. It is not an isolationist manifesto at all.
The section on adapting to the augmented workforce really caught my eye. It basically feels like the source is saying, don't compete with the machine, promote it.
It's the centaurs concept, half human, half horse, or in this economy, half human, half AI. The source advises that the most successful people in the future won't be the ones who proudly refuse to use AI.
It'll be the ones who use AI to handle all the rote, boring work.
Exactly, so they can double down on the distinctly human parts of their job.
So if you're a lawyer, you let the AI summarize the 10,000 pages of case law.
Yes. Let the AI do the tedious discovery. That completely frees you up to spend 3 hours face-to-face with your client.
Understanding their actual story.
Building the narrative strategy for the jury. Figuring out the exact ethical angle.
The AI raises the floor of competence.
But the human still sets the ceiling.
This is the human-machine synergy they talk about in Chapter 12. It's reframing the whole relationship from a race against the machine to a relay race with it.
That is a brilliant way to put it. The AI runs the first leg. The data gathering, the processing, the rough drafting.
And the human runs the anchor leg.
The judgment, the emotional connection, the final strategic decision.
The source basically argues that if you try to run that first leg against the robot, you are going to lose.
Every time.
But if you focus entirely on the anchor leg, you become totally indispensable.
It's essentially a call to become more human.
Which is ironic, right? The industrial age wanted us to be these perfect, reliable cogs.
The information age wanted us to be flawless data processors.
And now this new age actually wants us to be complex.
It's a return to the artisan and the trusted advisor. The exact traits that made us inefficient in the factory, our need for connection, our moral agonizing, our random curiosity, those are now the features. They aren't the bugs anymore.
That is incredible. Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. And we always like to leave you with a final thought to chew on.
Always.
And looking at this whole picture, the science of discovery, the mentorship, the creative intent, something really stands out to me.
What's that?
We have spent all of human history basically trying to find answers.
Right.
We built libraries, we built universities, and now we've built these massive AI models, all just to give us answers. But if the cost of an answer drops to zero,
which it has.
Right. If I can ask my phone literally anything and get a PhD-level response instantly,
then the intrinsic value of the answer completely collapses.
Exactly. It's basic economics 101.
Yeah.
Scarcity drives value. So if answers are cheap everywhere, what becomes expensive?
Question.
The question. The source actually hints at this with the curiosity chapter. A robot can solve for X perfectly.
But it cannot decide that X is the thing we should be solving for in the first place.
That is the ultimate human advantage, framing the problem, deciding what actually matters to us.
The AI is a brilliant, miraculous tool, but it's just sitting there on a server, blinking, waiting for you to give it a purpose.
So the most future-proof skill isn't knowing the solution anymore. It's knowing which problem is actually worth solving.
And caring enough to solve it.
That is a very powerful place to land. Don't worry about being replaced by a machine. Worry about being uninspired, because that is the one thing the machine can never fix for you.
Well said.
And that's it for today's deep dive into the human advantage. Go check out the full guide by StoryBuddiesPlay if you want the total breakdown of all 50 careers. Until next time, keep asking better questions.